Thousands of people marched on Washington on Friday on the anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. The march comes at a fraught time in American history, of course, with so much anger over police violence against people such as Jacob Blake, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd. And ABC's Alex Prochet has more from the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial this morning. Alex, good morning to you.
Dan, good morning to you as well. This memorial first opened to the public in 2011. You think about it, since then we've covered stories like Eric Garner and Tamir Rice. This year, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and others. Marchers saying those names represent what MLK spoke out on steps from here 57 years ago.
No justice! No peace!
They came from all over, thousands braving high heat, COVID temperature checks, and wearing masks.
Shut it down!
Retracing steps around the Lincoln Memorial where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once shared his dream with the country. Criminal justice reform at the heart of Friday's movement.
Demonstration without legislation will not lead to change.
And then this.
I just want to thank everybody who's been in support of getting justice for Breonna Taylor.
I wish George were here to see this right now.
Family members of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, emotional, taking the stage.
No justice!
Jacob Blake's father speaking too. This group walking all the way from Milwaukee to Washington, 800 miles over 24 days.
We've been called every name you can possibly think, every racial epithet you can think.
If people are willing to come out here in mass, this is an indication only a small fraction of how the polls are going to be.
Sheila Brewington grew up in the era of Martin Luther King Jr.
I hear emotion in your voice.
Yes.
This hits home for you.
You know, those things don't leave you when you're a black child.
Friday, she had her little ones with her. Also, this man with a sign that said, "My grandma marched on Washington in the 60s. I'm marching so that my grandkids won't have to."
And while the names of specific candidates rarely got mentioned yesterday, Vice Presidential nominee Kamala Harris did deliver a video address. The head of the DNC telling me that the takeaway for people is to vote. Janae?
All right, Alex, thank you so much. And joining us now is global human rights activist Martin Luther King III. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
So yesterday, it was remarkable seeing you speak to that massive crowd in the same spot where your father gave his famous I Have a Dream speech 57 years ago. What did that mean to you?
You know, what I thought about more than anything else was, while there were 8 or 10 families that we knew the names because they were high profile, I thought more than anything else about how many new cases I learned about that we've never heard about. And so how tragic these incidents are around police brutality and misconduct. That was not the first time, however, that I've done an anniversary march. So I've been there before, and every time I stand in that spot, I almost feel like my father is speaking through me.
And you have called on people to pursue your father's vision of equality. How do you feel that we can best do that?
Well, I think, number one, there are 3 or 4 things that we are, in a sense, demanding around 2 pieces of legislation. There's a George Floyd legislation that has been passed in the House. There's a John Lewis Voter Registration Restoration Act that's passed in the House. The Senate, it has not even been taken up. And so people are demanding, we're demanding that Mitch McConnell at least have a vote on these issues. And the other thing is that we're encouraging people all over the nation to register, to strategize, to organize, and to vote. There's nothing more important than this election. Usually in anniversary years, we haven't had an election, but because of the anniversary of the election this year, it makes it a little unique.
And all summer long, we have seen people taking to the streets, thousands of protesters out there yesterday. There's so much emotion, so much anger and anguish. What is your message to those protesters this morning? Well,
there's nothing wrong with anger. It's how you channel it. Not one incident occurred yesterday There are times when people are rioting and looting. That wasn't happening, so I'm not really sure. I think when you talk about the anger, it's how you choose to channel your anger. People have a legitimate right to be angry, and obviously should be angry, but it's channeling that anger into a positive energy and using it to vote, because if we vote in large numbers, we will change the conduct of this nation. Unfortunately, the president chooses to create division. We need unity, and we need candidates that personify that.
And I want to ask you about that. The president calling protesters thugs and anarchists, saying that they don't even know who George Floyd is. How do you respond to that?
The president says things every day that just aren't true. There could be some individuals like that, but the overwhelming large majority of demonstrators generally are protesting peacefully. But my father used to say a riot is the language of the unheard, and so he never condoned violence, but he understood why people were pushed to that position. And I look at it in this way. You know, in in Kenosha, Wisconsin, people were not rioting before Mr. Blake was shot. So no one says anything about the conduct that created the action. Every action creates a reaction. And yes, no one wants to see violence, but at some point we have to say, okay, we're not going to blame people, we're going to address the conduct.
All right.
When we treat people with dignity and respect, people respond differently.
And you are continuing the calls that your father started so long ago. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Lots of great stuff here. So go on, click the subscribe button right over here to get more of awesome videos and content from GMA every day, anytime. We thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the morning on GMA.